Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to
Afternoon.
meet you again, and I hope all participants can hear my. So maybe you ask them. Could you hear me? Could you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the second session online training with Semiokitab in language. My name is Wendy Nurfalak and I will be serving as your moderator for this session. Okay, let me to introduce our speakers. There are two speakers for this session. The speakers number one, Ms. Susi Fauzia, English language expert from Semiokitab in language, and the second speaker, Mr. Nirwan Syah, Arabic linguist from Sikil, Semiokitab in language. To remember the online training rules, I will show the rules. Wait a minute. Sorry to interrupt. Can you see the rules from narasumber resource person display? The important point of these rules is that participants must deactivate the microphone, listen quietly, and be able to ask by writing questions in the chat room. Now, the presentation material is about the second concept of higher order thinking skills. So, Mrs. Susi Fauzia, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wendy. Right, so this is the second meeting for Discovery Learning Model. Okay, but for those who have attended the pre-training, then this will be your third session. So you have already had 3 sessions to attend. Okay, and then like I always remind you about the certificates. So you have to attend at least 10 sessions, okay? 10 sessions, okay? So for those who have already had 3 sessions, then you still have 7 sessions to go, yeah. All right. And then, yeah, so this session is continuation of the earlier session, so it's still related to the concept of higher order thinking skills. Okay, so so for those who may skip, or for those who did not have the chance to join the previous meeting, okay, or the previous session, no worries, okay, because later on in the slide I will give a review from the earlier session. Okay, now because we have already had, many participants. I can see from the names listed on the attendance list. And then the time is also already 4 p.m. Just like the schedule. So then I I will ask the host to show the slides. Okay. So we'll see the slides for the second meeting. Okay, I always forget. So for those participants who would like to download or to get the files, we will send you the file after this meeting. Okay, so we will send you the file of the slides as well as the, later on maybe you will have the text, right, or the videos or other materials. Those will be shared after the session for the concept or for the illustration is over. Okay, right. So now for this second session, okay, so I will be accompanied by Mr. Nirwan. Okay, so I will present the first part and then Mr. Nirwan will continue for the second part. Right, okay, so it's still about the concept of higher order thinking skills. Right, now Mr. Hoss, could you please go to the next slide? Right, okay, as usual, okay, to make you focus on the presentation, it will be better if you know about the outline, okay, so that you won't go you won't think about other things. Okay, so basically for the outline we have four main parts, okay, related to the HOTS. Okay, first I will explain about the aim of this second meeting on discovery learning model, and then the review from the previous session, and then I will explain about the revised Bloom's taxonomy, okay, especially related to the dimension process. And then the last part will be questioning strategy. Okay, now let's go to the first part. Okay, the aim. Okay, so the aim of this session is to have an understanding on the two dimensions of revised Bloom's taxonomy, as well as to understand the questioning strategy as one of the ways to teach higher order thinking skills to your students. Right? Okay, so there are two things that will be gained by the participants in the end of the session then. Okay, the next slide, please. Right, review. Okay, so before we continue to the new material, I will review first. So for this, for the second meeting, it is a continuation from the first one, like I have told you. Okay, so on the first meeting, I have explained, so actually there are many definitions of thoughts, okay? But then for our meeting session, then the definition will be taken or will refer to the revised Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so like I have told you before that actually for HOTS, there are three widely known definitions, which are HOTS as a transfer process, and then HOTS as problem solving, and HOTS as critical thinking skill. Now, for our session, for our training, then we will understand higher order thinking skills as a process of thinking in which the students are able to use the material that they have learned in the classroom to their everyday life. Okay, so for example, if for students who learns about greetings in English, if the transfer has occurred, okay, if the process of transfer has occurred, it means that later on when the students are abroad, or if the students are in other places and then they meet the foreigners, then they can use the greetings, right? They can use the materials that they have learned in the classroom. Okay. Now, that's about the transfer. Now let's continue again to the next one. Yes, and then for HOTS, based on Weiss-Bloom's taxonomy, we can we can understand the levels of higher order thinking skills on the three upper level, which are analysis, evaluate, and create. It means that for the teachers who want the students to acquire higher order thinking skills, then in the learning process, either in planning the curriculum or planning the teaching process, or in the process of while learning or instruction, or in the process of assessment, then the teachers have to have the target for the students to achieve at least one of the three levels. Yeah. For example, like the students are able to analyze the narrative text like that, or the students are able to evaluate, or the students are able to create expository text, like that. So the educational target or the educational objective will refer to the three upper level of higher order thinking skills. Yeah. All right. The next one. Okay. And then, as I have told you before in the previous meeting, so in the Weiss-Bloom's taxonomy, different with the original version of Bloom's taxonomy, the dimension is different. So in the original version, there is only one dimension. But, however, in the Weiss-Bloom's taxonomy, then there are two dimensions, namely the knowledge dimension and cognitive process dimension. Okay, next. Now, in short, I will tell you that knowledge is the material, is the learning material. So it is about what students know. Okay, the material that you are going to learn, it is included in the knowledge dimension. And then for the second one, cognitive process. The cognitive process is the verb. It is about how student thinks about what they know. Okay, so you can see the knowledge is the noun or the learning material, whereas the cognitive process is the action, or it is how or in what way the students think about what they know. Okay, so it's different. Okay, next one. Right, and then you may have a question. Why there should be two dimensions in the Weiss-Bloom's taxonomy? The reason is because the revised Bloom taxonomy is intended mostly for teachers, right? And then for you or for us teachers, our main the main thing that we have to pay attention to while we are going to teach or in the process of teaching is the objective. Yeah. What kind of objectives that we want our students to achieve? Yeah. That's why the most important thing in the process of teaching and learning process is the statement of objective. Yeah, so before you go to the classroom, before you teach your students, first you have to form or you have to state what is the objective, what are the things that you want your students to be able to do. Okay, now here I give you an example. This is the statement of objective, or in Indonesian context we know standar kompetensi, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah, standard competency or competency standard. Okay, so the statement of objective is applied in English material. Okay, in Indonesia it is for English subject for senior high school students. Okay, this is the example. The students are able to apply social function, generic structure, and language features of transactional conversation text. Okay, so there we can see, right? In the statement of objective, the agent or the subject always the students. We all know about that. But then in the statement of objective, then it has to be clear what are uh, the things, okay, or what is the subject that they will learn, what is the material that they will learn, right? That is the noun, the knowledge. And then about the activities, what kind of activities, or at what level of cognitive we want the students to be able to reach. It has to be stated in the statement. That's why in all statement of objective, we will always find the cognitive process or the verb as well as the knowledge dimension or the noun. Now here, so we can see from the example, so the cognitive process or the verb is that apply, right? So it means the teacher wants the students to achieve the level of apply, right? Okay, and then the material. What is the material? The material is the social function, generic structure, and language features of transactional conversation text. Or in short, the knowledge is about the transactional conversation text. Now, so by referring that statement of objective, always have the two dimensions, the cognitive process and the knowledge. That's why the revised taxonomy Bloom also apply the two dimensions. That's why we will find the cognitive process dimension as well as the knowledge dimension. Okay, now the next slide, please. Right. We will start by looking at the different types of knowledge. Okay, so in revised taxonomy, there are 4 types of knowledge. There are factual knowledge, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. You may wonder, why is it important to know the knowledge? Of course, it's important because when you know the types of knowledge, then you will determine, okay, at first, okay, I want the students to learn the knowledge until what level? That is the use of knowing about the types of knowledge. Okay, so from here, actually, we can say similar to the cognitive process. So it is also a gradual. It is what do you call it? A leveling. There is a leveling. Okay, so factual knowledge is the most basic knowledge, and then when you give more complex, then it becomes conceptual knowledge. More complex again becomes procedural. And the most complex of all is metacognitive knowledge. So if you have known about this knowledge, then you can have an orientation. Okay, I want my students to learn this material until what level. You can do that. All right. So before I give you a detailed overview, okay, a detailed explanation about each type, then I will give you an overview or a big picture of these types of knowledge. Okay, so factual knowledge is the knowledge that should be mastered by students at the very basic level. Okay, so for example, yeah, as you can see from the terms factual, it is mostly about the facts, right? So facts involve just like um, alphabet, right? Numbers. It's still the basic one. Okay. Or for example, like this, I can give you an example. Okay, real example. For example, if Mr. Nirwan, okay, if Mr. Nirwan teaches about the story of Abu Nawas to his students in the class, okay, uh, he can decide on what level of knowledge he will teach the students. If he wants the students only to remember the facts, only to know the characters, only to remember the names of the characters, then it is factual knowledge. Okay, it's very basic. Okay, that's why he can just ask the students to, okay, who are the characters in the story of Abu Nawas? Just like that. And the students can just say, okay, the characters are A, B, C, D. That's enough. It is only at factual knowledge. But then, if Mr. Nirwan wants the students to achieve or to go to higher level conceptual knowledge, then he can insert the concept that can be found from the story. For example, we have a concept of protagonist, right? We also have concept of antagonist, right? Protagonist means uh, it's a classification or it is a category of good people, right? Okay, for those who are considered as good, then they are protagonists. But the bad people, they are the antagonists. Now it means the students will go one higher level. If in the factual knowledge, they only name the characters, but then when they learn about conceptual knowledge, they learn about protagonists, it means they have to they have to classify first. Okay, so who are the good people? Who are the bad people? Good people are protagonists. Okay, and the characters are A, B, C, D. Okay, but then uh, if it's the antagonist, they have to classify again. They have to categorize again. Okay, which are the bad people? Okay, the bad people are uh, UVWX, for example, like that. And then, okay, the bad people are the antagonists. So they have learned about the concept. Okay, so it's one higher level. And then the next one is procedural. Procedural knowledge is different with the two previous knowledge. So factual and conceptual knowledge focus on the what. The what, okay. But procedural is about how. So it's about how to make something. So if we relate the procedural knowledge to the short story, it means the teacher will ask students to learn about, for example, the structure of a short story, and then later on, they will know, okay, what are the parts, and then later on, they will be able to write or to form the structure of a story. So procedural is on how, okay. And metacognitive knowledge is considered as is considered having higher level considered to the other types because metacognitive is related to the personal of the students. Okay, so metacognitive is not only about remembering the material. It is not only about knowing the structure or understanding the concept, but it's about how the students can relate the knowledge or the material that they get from the teachers to their own life. Okay, for example, uh, if it's if the material is about story of Abu Nawas, then then the teachers, for example, they can show, okay, so what is the moral story of this uh, of Abu Nawas story? What is the moral message? Okay, and then from the moral message, the students will understand. Oh, okay, so uh, if they have moral values, and then they learn. Oh, okay, so the good things have to be applied, or they have to do good things by for example, if the moral message is like, if you do good deeds to other people, then other people uh, will give you kindness as well, something like that. And then you can relate the moral message or the moral values with the condition or the situation of or the personal experience of the students. Okay, and then you can ask like, do you agree with this? And then do you have any personal experience similar to the moral messages? Yeah, like that. So the students are involved, and by doing so, then the students will realize that, oh, okay, the material is not only about academic, but it's also about something that they have to learn and also useful in their life, like that. So if you know, if the teachers all know about different types of knowledge, then they can have target. So in the beginning of the teaching itself, they can make target. Oh, okay, I want my students to achieve conceptual knowledge or procedural or metacognitive. It's possible, okay? That's why, because it is useful, then we will go more detail into these types of knowledge. Yeah, okay. Please, the next slide. Right. Okay. Yeah, just like I have told you before, okay. So factual knowledge is the most basic uh, elements. Okay, it means the basic things that have to be mastered by the students before they master uh, the other knowledge. Okay, so for factual knowledge, there are two parts. Okay, and then on the slides you can also see the examples. So on the slides, we have given you the examples related to the language teaching. Okay, now, so you can imagine, right? So for those students who learn foreign language at the basic level, okay, they have just learned, for example, for those who just learn Arabic in the first meeting, of course, they will have to learn about this basic knowledge, right? In the meeting, they will learn, in the first meeting, the students will have to learn, of course, about alphabet, right? Especially like Arabic, right? They have different, right? What do you call it in Arabic? Alphabet, alif, ba, ta, sa, hijaiyah ya? Yeah.
Huruf, harfun.
Oh, harfun. Okay. Yeah, that's right. So for those students, before they go to the next level, then they have to learn about the basic elements. Okay, so in Arabic we have harfun, okay, and English, we have alphabet, okay? Japanese, what do they have, like kanji, yeah?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They have like kanji and kana, like that, different. And then numbers, okay? Numbers are also different. In English, numbers the same, right? 1, 2, 3, like that. In Arabic, still 1, 2, 3.
Wahid.
Oh yeah, Wahid is name, right? So the same numbers but different, right? Okay, so in the first meeting they have to learn about that. Yeah. So do you agree? Yeah.
I agree with you.
Okay. And then basic vocabulary. Okay. Basic vocabulary. Um, it depends. I mean, usually, if in teaching in learning language, it will be based on the team, right? So there are basic vocabulary for every team. And then of course, phonetic symbol. Yeah. Okay. So it's the basic elements. And then for the factual knowledge, it's divided into two subtypes. We have the knowledge of terminology. Okay, so the terminology are the examples that I have mentioned earlier. And then there is also knowledge of specific details and elements. Okay, so it's more specific and it's related to certain topics. Okay, like this. If in terminology, it's more general, like alphabet, number, but then when we go to knowledge of specific details and elements, we have already had the context. Right? So we have, for example, number for dates, name of days, name of months, and greetings, like that. Okay, now let's go to the next slide. Okay, now conceptual knowledge. So conceptual knowledge is one step or one higher level than factual. Why? Because there is an interrelationship. So it's not about, uh, so it's not just like mentioning one word or one item, okay, and separate from the context. No, but there are interrelationships. So there are things that we have to do before finally we can say that, oh, okay, there is a concept. Okay, just like the uh, previous example. Okay, so for example, in factual knowledge, in Abu Nawas story, the students only name the characters in random. But when you give the concept, for example, like protagonist, then they have to do classification, right? So they have to classify the characters, find who are the good people, and then they can say, oh, okay, so the characters are included in in the protagonist, like that. Okay. Yeah. So conceptual is a little bit complex than the factual. Okay, and then for the subtypes, there are 3 subtypes. Okay, the first one is related to the classification and categories. So it's more like groupings, right? Okay, and in English, we have part of speech, we have the nouns, right? The verbs, adjective, adverbs, and then in Indonesia we have kata benda, ya, kata kerja, kata sifat, adverb, kata bantu, kata keterangan, kata keterangan. Okay, in Arabic, how about in Arabic?
What?
The examples of parts of speech. What do you call it in Arabic?
Ismun.
Oh, ismun.
Ismun.
Fi'il. Fi'lun.
Ismun, fi'lun, wa harfun.
Oh, okay. Ismun, fi'lun, and harfun. Okay. The next one, knowledge of principles and generalization. So, sorry? Okay. And then for the principles and generalizations. So it's it's the focus is on generalizations. Okay, so it's finding the general things or general concepts. Okay, so yeah, it's a bit different from the first subtype. Okay, so in English we have, for example, the forming the gerund, to infinitive, and past participle verb. Because in gerund there are some principles or generalizations that we have to follow so that we know that this is the gerund. For example, the gerund means like in simple we can say verb ing. So if you have the verb speak, you want to form the gerund, then you have to change it or add ing, so it becomes speak becomes speaking, right? Or to infinitive, so two plus verb one, like that. To speak. Okay, past participle verb means the past verb spoken. Yeah. Okay, that it's included in the principles and generalizations. And then for the third type, theories, okay, models and structures. For structures, in English, I can give you example, passive voice, active voice, okay, and like, for example, the constructions, okay, for uh, future tense, okay, so, or past tense, nah, they are included in the knowledge of theories, models, and structures, okay. How about in Arabic? How about in Arabic? Okay. Can you add other examples maybe?
Subtypes
Yeah.
A, B, C, or
Okay. Any from the street? A, B, or C?
actually in Arabic it seems to in English, yeah.
Oh.
There are passive voice and active. I mean active and passive. But we have to know about, I don't know in English, harokat.
Oh,
It's-
harokat. Oh, yeah, okay. Harokat is like, if, for example, you have the word, what is it? Can you mention, for example, the name, uh,
Fathah,
oh yeah, fathah, kasroh, yeah, doma, like that. So it becomes,
it's
it changes like
a
that.
way to make
Oh.
changes from active to passive.
Passive,
Yeah.
okay, so in Arabic there is also passive voice. Okay, right. The next one then. Okay, so I can have more examples, yeah, from Mr. Nirwan. Thank you. Right, next one, procedural. Okay, so you can see from the slide. So basically, the keyword will be is how. Okay, so procedural is about how. It's about how to do something. It's about methods. It's about techniques. Yeah. So if it's about how to create something or how to conduct something, then it is procedural. Okay. But and then for procedural, there are three subtypes. So we have knowledge of subject, knowledge specific skills and algorithms. And then we also have knowledge of subject specific techniques and methods. And the third part is knowledge of criteria for determining when to use appropriate procedures. Okay, so you can see the keywords for each subtypes. So for the first one, the focus is on skills. Okay, procedural or ways related to skills and algorithms. Okay, here example are knowledge on skills about how to determine word meaning based on structural analysis. Okay, so for example, if we have the structure of active voice, okay, the pattern will be subject, verb, and object. Now, the object usually in form of noun. Okay, and we can guess, okay, or if it is a noun, probably the meaning is like this. It's possible, okay. And then another example is about the skills or about how to compose a type of text. Yeah, there are many types of text, and the ways are also different. Okay, so the way on how to compose the text, whether it is expository, narrative, or so on, then the way is included in procedural, procedural knowledge. Or the way to compose a dialogue, now it's also procedural knowledge, and it's on the first subtype. Yeah. All right. How about the second one? The second one, the focus is on techniques and methods. Yeah. For learning languages, we know many kinds of techniques. Yeah. For example, presentation, of course. In every foreign language learning, all students will be required to do a presentation, right? And then skimming. Skimming is reading quickly to find main ideas. And then we also have scanning. Scanning is technique to find specific word. Okay, it's called scanning. And then there are also various methods of literary criticism. So literary criticism, the methods will depend on the approach. So as I know, there are hermeneutics and also like feminism, right? So it's based on the approach. Or structural approach, yeah. So the approach will determine the methods. All right, and then the third subtypes. The focus is on criteria. Okay, so when the students learn about this type of knowledge, then they will know what are the criteria used to determine here, for example, to determine the types of essays to write. Okay, for example, you ask them to write text, but then you give them the target, okay, and then the objective. Okay, for example, if the target are they have to write a text, but the target are their peers or their friends, and then the objective is to ask or to persuade your friends to go to your party, then it means, okay, so they have to write the persuasive text like that. Or if the objective of the text is only to describe, then the students can write like descriptive text, right? Or expository text. Yeah, it's possible like that. Okay, that's for procedural. Now let's go on to the next one. All right, metacognitive. Yeah. So metacognitive is to make it simpler. Yeah, I will just say metacognitive is about a knowledge related to the personality of the students. So it relates to them in a personal way. Okay, so not just as general, okay, not just as something that can be applied to all and the same, but it's something that will be specific. Okay, now for example here, strategic knowledge. Now, for strategic knowledge, so it's we can see from the examples. So basically, those knowledge related to strategy on how to learn something more effectively, right? Now, strategy to learn, okay, and to make it effective actually will be different, right? From one student to other students. That's why we have categories or we have types of learners, right? We have kinesthetic learners, we have visual learners, audio learners, and it means that that the way they learn will be different. Nah, the strategic knowledge also follow the category or the personality of the students, right? So for example, like this, for knowledge of various mnemonic strategies for memory, okay, these strategies may be effective for most students, but probably several students will have different strategies. It's no problem. As long as the students know, okay, they can identify their own strengths and then they can decide, oh, okay, so the strategy that is more suitable for me is this strategy. Okay, so strategic knowledge is the learning strategy that is suitable for the person itself. Yeah. Okay, and then another example, knowledge of various elaboration strategies. Yeah, so like elaboration strategies, there are many strategies, but not all strategies will be suitable for every student. Okay, and then this, for example, we have paraphrasing and summarizing. Okay, so if it's metacognitive, then you have to ensure that the students know about themselves, and then although it is strategic knowledge, but they are the one who will decide whether it is accepted or suitable for them or not. Right. Right. And then the next one, knowledge about cognitive tasks, including contextual and conditional knowledge. Okay, this is knowledge that will be known by students, okay, based on their personal experience or based on the material that they have learned. Okay, so so this knowledge is also something that will be known by those that are uh, that have self-awareness. Okay, so for example, like this, the knowledge that a primary source book may be more difficult to understand than a general textbook or popular book. And so this knowledge can be gained if they are aware of about their own learning, like that. Okay, so yeah, it's personal, and then this knowledge about like the about cognitive tasks will help them to uh, learn better or to learn more effectively, because if they know about the cognitive tasks and then about the context and then the conditional knowledge, then they can find a way about, oh, okay, so uh, if primary source book is more difficult, then they will try to find another strategy, right? Okay, so it means that they have to find other books with the same material, okay, but more understandable, okay, right? And then self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is also personal. So it's about the first example is awareness that whether he or she or whether the students know about the strengths and weaknesses. Okay, because if they have self-knowledge, then the students can decide, oh, okay, because my strength, for example, if in learning languages, okay, and they know about their strength, for example, in 4 skills, we have listening, we have speaking, writing, and listening, speaking, writing, what else? I don't know.
Reading.
Reading, yeah, reading, okay. Right, reading skills. Now, if they know about their strengths and weaknesses, then um, starting from from the learning, they can decide, oh, okay, so I'm good in speaking, but I'm not good in writing. Oh, okay, it means that the student has to allocate more time for the weakness. Okay, for example, because she's good in speaking but not good in writing, it means the time allocation will be more for studying writing, like that. Okay. So self-knowledge also help the students to determine about the things that he likes. Okay. So another example is knowledge of the personal interest. So for example, if in your class you give a project, right? And then you give you give students freedom to choose their own project. Now, if they know about this self-knowledge, then they will choose the project that they are most interested in, so that they will have more optimal products, or they can have better results. Okay. Yeah. So metacognitive is very important. Okay. Because it's not only about general knowledge, but it's also about the the student itself, about their personal. Okay, so if you can teach metacognitive knowledge, then you can involve the students optimally in your learning. Yeah. Okay. Next one. Right. Okay. So before we go to the next dimension, right? So for dimension of knowledge, yeah, so you have to determine, okay, before you, okay, when you plan your teaching, yeah, or the learning, then you have to know, okay, so until what level will I teach the material? Is it only until the factual level? If it's factual level, then it is only a rote learning. Okay, so only learn to remember. But if you want to uh, give them meaningful learning, then you have to give them uh, the knowledge on the level of conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, as well as at the level of metacognitive, yeah, metacognitive knowledge. Right. Okay, so that's about the material, but the knowledge dimension. Now we will go to the cognitive process. Okay, or at what level, at what thinking level you want your students to reach. Okay. I will repeat from the previous sessions. Okay, so what's it? Right, left, yeah. On the left side in 1956, so you can see the picture of cognitive levels from the original version of Taxonomy Blue. And for our our session, we will focus on the right side. Okay. So the book is published on 2001, and then you can see that the levels for cognitive process, or the categories, are remember, understand, and apply. The three levels are in the levels of lower order thinking skills, and the three upper level, which are analyze, evaluate, and create, are at the level of higher order thinking skills. Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, the next one. Okay, now before I explain to you more details about the cognitive process, now I want to make you see the relation between the educational goals and the cognitive process, yeah, or the level of thinking. Yeah. So I have to remind you that basically the two most important goals in education is to promote retention and to promote transfer. Okay. If it's only to promote retention, it means that you only stop, okay, to teach your students at the level of remember, only at the first level. It's retention. So your target is only to make your students to be able to recall or to remember the material that has been learned. Okay, so for example, if you say, okay, the alphabet is A, B, C, and then later, after the class, they will remember, okay, A, B, C. So still the same. Now, it's retention. Now, if you only stop at retention, then it's not meaningful learning. It's still rote learning. Okay, so memorization, it's still memorization. That's why you have to achieve the second one, the second goal, which is promote transfer, which is you enable your students to use the learning material in the class to handle new problems or to handle their everyday problems and enable them to answer questions, okay, using the material that has been learned, and to enable them so that they can learn the new subject matter easily, okay, easier. Yeah. So when you use this revised Bloom's taxonomy, then the main goal is not retention, okay, not only to enable the students to memorize, no, but the main goal is how to make the students to have a meaningful learning, or they are able to transfer the knowledge to new context. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. And then to achieve this aim to promote transfer, then we have or we can apply the cognitive levels in revised taxonomy Bloom. Okay. That's why it is important to know the cognitive levels. Yeah. Okay. Next one. Next slide. Right. Okay. This is the lowest level. Yeah. Remember now. On this level, then the target of the education or the learning target is only retention or only remembering. Okay. So the target is how the students can remember the knowledge or can take can easily take the knowledge that they have from their long-term memory. Okay, so it's only remember. Okay, and then there are two subtypes of remember. So there are recognizing and recalling. If it's recognizing, it means the students are able to identify or recognize, for example, the names of days. So it means it's still at the basic level. Yeah. Okay, and then in recalling, it's almost the same. So in recalling, for example, the students can recall greetings in foreign language. The difference will be like in the assessment, okay, but basically the target will be just remembering. Okay, the next one then, okay, yeah, understand. If we teach the students from this understand, okay, from the level of understand, then our target is not only retention, but move to transfer. Okay. Right. So basically in the level of understand, so we ensure that the students can gain meaning, okay, from the material, okay, or here the term is construct meaning. Okay, what does it mean by construct meaning? So if your students are at the level of understand, yeah, then they not only repeat the same information, but they can give still the same information, but it can be in different form or different language or in form of examples, right? Or in form of giving classification. It's possible. But they can deliver about what they know in one step higher level, in one higher level. Okay, so not exactly the same. So for example, if the teacher says A, the students not only says A. Okay, the students can say other words, but the meaning, oh, it's still A. Okay, so it's more developed, yeah. Right, okay, and then there are subtypes for cognitive processes. So in terms of understand, we can see whether the students understand or not from the from the cognitive or from their actions. Okay, for example, in the subtype, if they understand, then your students can interpret. Nah, in the activities, it means they can paraphrase. They can do paraphrasing, for example, paraphrasing a speech, or if they have understood about the parts of speech, they can change nouns to verbs, or the other way around, like that. Okay, and then exemplifying. If your students understand about the material, then they can give examples. Or another way, they can classify the words based on the explanation. Okay, so for example, for English teachers, you have taught your students about parts of speech, and then you want to check, okay, whether they understand or not about my material. Then one of the way is you can ask them to classify several words, okay, based on the parts of speech. If the classification is correct, okay, it means they understand. Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the next one. Another form to know that your student has understood the material is summarize. Yeah. So in your class, to check your students' understanding, then you can ask them to write a summary. Okay. So first activity, you can give an event, okay, or a recording on a video about an event, and then to check whether they understand or not, then you can ask them to write a summary, and then you read the summary to check their understanding. Okay, another, the next one is inferring. Inferring is concluding. Okay, the activity will be you give, for language learning, you give many examples, okay, several examples to your students, and then you ask your students to conclude the grammatical rules. Okay, the next one, comparing. Comparing, for example, here you can see the example is that you ask the students to compare the construction of active and passive voice. Okay, and then later on they can see, okay, the difference is maybe okay, the different form of verbs like that, or there are different parts, okay, that they get that may exist in passive voice but do not exist in active voice, yeah, like that. Okay, and then explaining. Okay, if your student understand, then they can explain. Okay, so you give them examples, okay, and then they compare, and then you can ask them to explain. If they understand, they can explain. Okay, for example, you ask your students to explain how to form a noun phrase. Now, if they understand, they can explain the ways to form a noun phrase using their own words. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay, that's the second level. And the next one. Okay. The third one, apply. Okay, so apply here, it is at the level when your students can use the procedure. Okay, so for example, you give your students an example of dialogue text, right? And then if you ask them, okay, or if you want them to be able to apply, you can choose whether is it in subtypes of executing or implementing. Now, what's the difference? If you choose the first subtype, executing, okay, so it means the student only simulate, okay, the dialogue that has exists. Okay, so the same situation, and they only perform the dialogue, nothing new. But if you ask them to perform a dialogue in a new context, okay, for example, you give them example, and then you give them, okay, but the context is different, yeah, you have to make some changes, okay, and then they make the dialogue, then it's in implementing. Yeah. So the difference is in the context. If it's old context like role play, then it is executing. But if it's new context, then it's implementing, but still on the level of apply, the third level. Yeah. Okay, the next one. Now, yes, number 4. We have come to the level of higher order thinking skill. It's analyze. Okay, here we can see that for analyze, yeah, there are the keywords. Okay, first is break material into its constituent parts. Okay, and then the second one is determine how the parts relate to one another and to an overall structure or purpose. Okay, so in analyze, it means that the students must be able to deconstruct. Okay, so for example, if in text, then they have to deconstruct the text into small parts, into smaller parts. Okay, that's why in text usually we can see the students are asked to deconstruct the part of the text, and then they can know, okay, what are the social functions, and then the generic structures. They break the generic structures into smaller parts, right? So they know, okay, the parts are like this. Okay, so that's the break material, the deconstruction. And then determine, yes, because from the deconstruction, then they can see the relation between the part. For example, if it's an essay, they can see the relation. Okay, if it's an academic essay, like on the first part we have introduction, right, and then we have the body paragraphs, we have the concluding paragraphs. They the students on this analyze, yeah, on this analyze level, they will deconstruct. Okay, so they break the parts of essay into several parts, and then they see the connections. Okay, and then they determine, okay, how the parts are related from introduction to the body paragraphs and the concluding paragraph. Yeah, it's the level, on the level of analyze. And then there are 3 subtypes: differentiating, organizing, and attributing. So for differentiating, okay, the focus is more on the same, like almost the same like comparing, but in comparing it's large context, it's general context. But if it's differentiating, then it's in a small context. Okay, for example, like differentiating one text type with other types, right? So the context is clear, the text type. Okay, but if it's comparing, then the context will be very general. Okay, not only the text type. Okay, so that's differentiating. Yeah. So you will differentiate between one text with another text like that. And then if it's organizing, then the focus will be on the structure. That's why the example is like jumble paragraphs. So you can give like paragraphs, yeah, random paragraphs, and then you ask your students to analyze and then ask them about, okay, so do you think the first paragraph is about what? And then you can ask them to make a new essay, okay, or a suitable essay in a correct order, like that. Okay. Organizing related to the structure and attributing. Attributing, okay, or the alternative names, deconstructing, it's more on the author's point of view. Okay, so it's more implicit. If it's organizing, it's the structure, right? But the attributing, it's more on the internal one. Okay, like the point of view. Okay, the next one. Right, evaluate. Okay, now in evaluating, it's almost similar with making judgments, okay, based on criteria and standards. Okay, so if your students have known about how to analyze one text type, then you can ask them to evaluate. Yeah, and then for evaluating, there are two subtypes: checking and critiquing. What are the difference? The difference is, if it's checking, then it's more on the internal composition. But if it's critiquing, it's more on giving values or from external criteria. So if it's checking, the activity can be like the first example, ask your students to detect inconsistencies in persuasive messages. For example, you give text, persuasive text to your students, and then you ask them to see, is there any flaws? Is there any illogical things? Okay, or for example, if you give a video about president debate, you can ask your students to see, okay, whether there are inconsistencies there. Okay, so it's on the internal criteria. But if it's critiquing, it will be, for example, judging text, okay, based on external criteria and standards. So it's more just like, okay, so the students have to see the text, okay, they evaluate the text and they give scoring, okay, and they can explain, okay, why they think this text, okay, text number 1 is good, text number 2 is bad, like that. They can explain about their arguments. Okay, right. Next one. Okay, the last one. This is the last stage, the last step. So this is the higher level, the highest level, create. Okay, now create is about how your students can make something new. Okay, so they have learned and then they make something new. If it's text, then they can write new text. Now, for create, there are 3 subtypes, and then there are differences, different focus on every subtypes. If it's generate, it's more on ideas. Okay, that's why for generating, you can ask your students to give or suggest ways to solve a problem. Okay, so if we give the example in the form of essay assignment, so generating is still in the state of brainstorming. They have to generate ideas about, okay, for example, if it's if it's argumentative text, then they have to generate, okay, what are arguments that are most reasonable, what are arguments that can be accepted to support his or her opinions, like that. It's generating. And then when you want your students to go into planning, it means you ask them to make an outline. That's the planning. Okay, and then for producing, it is when you ask them to compose a text. Yeah, so you can see the difference. Yeah, so in create we have generate, generating, planning, producing. Yeah, and in essay process, in a process of making essay, then it is aligned with generating ideas or brainstorming, and then making the outline, and the last one is composing the text. Yeah. Okay, so those are the 6 level of revised taxonomy bloom. Okay, and it's related to the concept of how to acquire students, how to make your students achieve the higher order thinking skills. Okay, so that's the second part. Okay, and then the next part will be presented by Mr. Nerwan. Okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, Ms. Susi. Before we continue to the next material, I want to review what Ms. Susi explained to us today. Yeah, there are 2 dimensions of revised Bloom taxonomy, yeah, which are knowledge dimension and cognitive process dimension. Knowledge dimension consists of 4 types of knowledge, namely factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. And meanwhile, the cognitive process dimension consists of six categories, or we can call it 6 level, namely remember, understand, apply, then analyze, evaluate, and create. Remember, understand, and apply level are included to lower order thinking category. Meanwhile, analyze, evaluate, and create are included to higher order thinking category. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah. Next, the question is how to teach higher order thinking skills in the classroom, in our classroom. We can facilitate the students to reach higher order thinking by using teaching strategy. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, as a teacher, we know a lot of strategies that can be used while teaching. For example, KWL strategy. I think you all of you know about that, and now want to know learn a strategy, and then think, pair, share strategy, and questioning strategy, and etc. and many more. In this session, we only focus on one strategy, namely questioning strategy. Next slide, please, Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
Yeah, we only focus on questioning strategy because it is the most common strategy used by teacher, or the most used strategy in the classroom. It is believed that the strategy can help students reach higher order thinking. According to the research, teachers are considered as a professional question maker. Yeah. In 1 per hour, a teacher can generate 120 questions, and in a day, per day, teachers can generate 400 questions. It is also found that the level question asked determines the level of students' thinking. So in this strategy, teachers deliver questions, including instructions that stimulate students' thinking skill. So the question should not only demand yes or no answer, but also thinking logic process or higher order thinking. Next slide, please. According to Steve Dart, the classroom questions tend to fall into two broad categories. The first one is display questions, and the second one is referential questions. Display questions, these are designed to elicit learners' prior knowledge and to check comprehension. This question often focus on the form or meaning of language structures and items, and the teacher already knows the answer. Meanwhile, the referential question require the learner to provide information, give an opinion, explain, or clarify. This question often focus on content rather than language. And the answer is not necessarily known by the teacher. Okay, then next slide, please. Yeah. Then to make sure that we deliver questions that encourage higher order thinking, we can refer to revised Bloom's taxonomy. We can refer to the 6th level of cognitive, namely remember, understand, to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. In the next slide, we will present samples of question or instruction. The samples are designed based on the narrative text used as teaching material. Next slide, please. Yeah. These are the samples. On the remembering level, we can ask questions such as, who is the main character in the story? And the second one, where does the story take place? Then in the next level, understand, we can ask questions such as, the first one, what is the main idea of the first paragraph of the story? And the second one, retell the story using your own words or in your native language. Then in the next level, on the apply level, we can ask questions such as, make a dialogue between character A and character B based on the narrative text, or demonstrate the main character's attitude in the story. Now, the 3 level are include to lower order thinking. Yeah, next slide, please. And then the next level, analyze. We can ask questions: what causes the conflict in the story? And then what can you conclude from the main character? Then in the next level, evaluate. We can ask question, do you think the main character's attitude is right? Please explain. Or as a narrative work, in your opinion, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the story? Then in the highest level, namely create, we can ask questions, how will you modify the story? And then if you are the main character, what will you do to solve the problem in the story? Next slide, please. Yeah. Thanks. In order to succeed, we should not only think about the questions, but also the techniques of questioning. There are 8 techniques that can be implemented. The first one is remember wait time. Wait time 3 until 10 seconds after each question before calling on any responder, or wait 3 until 10 seconds after the last response before introducing a new question. And then the second one, ask follow-ups. Yeah. For example, you can ask the student, why? Do you agree? Can you elaborate? Can you give me an example? And etc. And then establish eye contact and cue students' responses. It means you give opportunity for every student to answer. Avoid always selecting those with raised hands. Then, without judgment, yeah, let your student know that there is not a single correct answer for some questions. Then, allow student questioning. Yeah, it means you respond to student answer in a non-evaluative manner. Yeah. Next, move closer to a student who doesn't usually respond. And the last, value all responses. Yeah, if a student's response is incomplete, continue questioning or paraphrase the response and ask for clarification. Yeah, I think that's all our material for today. Maybe we will have only 5 minutes. I don't know how we present the task or assignment, or maybe we open Q&A session.
Oh, okay. Before we go to the Q&A, because there is an exercise. Okay, so Mr. Nirwan will explain about the exercise first, okay, and then we will go to the Q&A. Yeah. The exercise first.
Session in the next slide, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, we can skip that first.
Okay. In the next session, this is the instruction for our participant. Yeah, to complete the task. The first one is choose one text from 2 narrative texts that will be sent to your email by kitabinlanguage.training@gmail.com. Yeah. We will send you two narrative texts maybe tomorrow morning. Yeah, please check your email tomorrow morning, and then make at least 3 questions or instructions for every level of cognitive process dimension. For remember level, understand level, apply level, analyze, evaluate, and create level. Yeah. At least 3 questions or instruction for every level. And then please send your tasks to us to kitabandlanguage.training@gmail.com due by 3 August 2019. And then what you done, the task will be discussed on the next session. Maybe we will give opportunity to the participant in the next session to present, yeah, what they're done, yeah. Maybe it's about 3 or 5 minutes in the session. That's it.
Okay. Okay, so that's for the exercise. Okay, so the task, you can do the task after we have sent you the text, okay, and then send it to us the latest on 3 August. Yeah. Okay, now we'll go to the question and answer session, okay. Mr. Nirwan?
You can read.
Okay, that one, the first one, the first question.
How can we get the PPT?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we already informed you all that we will share the PPT by Google Drive. Yeah.
Yeah. So after this session.
After this session.
So it it may be available the soonest, maybe tomorrow. Yeah, the soonest will be tomorrow, and we will inform you via email. Okay, the next one.
To develop the lesson using HOTS in different levels. Yeah.
Okay. The next question, how to develop the lesson using HOTS in different level competency. So basically, what is it? The first thing you have to do is you have to check the statement of objectives, yeah, or the competency standard, and then you have to identify. Okay, so what is the material at what level? Okay, at what level of knowledge that will be taught, and then for the thinking level, in what level, it is also can be inferred from the statement of objectives. Okay, so just like the example I have given to you. So from the statement of objective, you can identify which level is it. Okay, and then the material in which level of dimension is it, uh, and then you plan the teaching activities, yeah, as well as for the assessment. Okay, I think in general, and then later you can ask again. Okay. Right, and then yeah, the next one. Okay, how to teach metacognitive knowledge? Yeah, actually, teaching metacognitive knowledge is the same like teaching other knowledge. But you have to ensure that you relate the knowledge that you are teaching to the student's experience or student's personal experience. Like the example before, if you teach about short story, okay, you can discuss starting from the factual knowledge, the characters in random, until the procedural knowledge about how to make the story, okay, based on the structure. And then you deep the material more by discussing about the moral values or about, for example, uh, the character attitudes, and then you relate it uh, to the student's life, whether they agree or not, right? So it is on the metacognitive knowledge, and it's on the level of evaluation, like that. And then how to evaluate metacognitive knowledge? If it's evaluate, then because the metacognitive knowledge is related to the student's personal experience, then you can just ask the students directly. It's possible.
Yeah.
And then,
Last question, maybe.
okay, which one?
Would you mind?
Oh yeah,
explaining
okay.
more about
Then, yes. Okay, one more question then.
Yeah,
Would you mind explaining more about KWL strategy?
I'm so sorry.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
maybe just in short.
yeah. As far as we know, maybe there are very much learning strategy. Strategy to teach in the classroom. But in this session, we will choose questioning strategy because it is the most common strategy used by teachers. Yeah, in everyday teacher. I'm sure that teacher always have question to the student. Yeah. So we will hope after joining this session, all of you can make a plan to design question to design to the question. So it is not just cover lots, but also hot. That's it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I can add a little bit. Okay, so KWL can also be applied in the class. So the intention of using KWL is to know the progress of the students. Okay, that's why in the first, so it's like you have 3 columns. Yeah, it can be placed on the board, yeah, or you write on the board. It's okay, or using post-it, it's also possible. So K is about know. So it's about the things that your students have already known before they come to the class. Okay, so you can start by discussing about what they have already known, and then the teacher can relate the knowledge that the students have known before with the material, right? Know and then want. So what is about what the students want to know more. So it means that the teacher can facilitate the students as well as not only to gain knowledge but also to increase their interest, right? So the students, so that the teaching can be more, let's say, can stimulate the process, the teaching and learning process can be more engaging like that. So know what and then learn, had learned. Okay. So from the last column, had learned, then in the end of the teaching process or the learning process, the student will write, okay, I have learned about this, like that. So it means that they have learned about something new, or as well as they can reflect about their learning as well. Okay, so that is the main point of why the teacher choose to use KWL strategy in the learning process. Okay, actually we still have more questions. Okay, so we will keep the questions and then later we will, yeah, if we still have time in the next session, then we can give you questions. Sorry, we can give you the answers. Yeah. Okay, so please for for some of you whose questions have not been answered now, okay, then maybe we will answer your questions in the next session. Okay, so that's it. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for your participation. Okay. Nice to have you here. Sorry. Okay, and then for this session, we will end the concept of HOTS, okay, at this duration, okay, and then next session we will meet again with the new topic. Right, so thank you, and now it's the time for moderator, so yeah, I hand over the station to you then. Yes, please, Mr. Wendy.
All right. Sorry, we have a limit duration, so we have to come to the end of this session. I would like to thank to our speakers for today, Mrs. Susi Fauzia and Mr. Nirwan Shah. And for your information, next online training session will be conducted on Monday, 5 August 2019, and we'll discuss about discovery learning model concept. And thank you very much for the participants for joining us in this online training. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Okay. See you.